This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions.
This is Joe Rabil with Invest Like a Pro. And what I'm going to do is I had a question regarding Bitcoin, actually on cryptos, but I'm going to use Bitcoin. I don't really look at all of the different cryptos, so I'm just going to focus with the one that I do look at periodically. And I want to show a few nuances that I think are a little bit different and certainly some framework that you need to be aware of. So let's go ahead and get into this. I want to use this example. So the time frames that was being asked was to use the same time frames that I had up, which was a monthly, weekly, daily, and then I had an hourly here. But we don't want to use an hourly. We want to use a 4 hour. Okay. And the reason is that this trades 24 hours. So if on a daily, if we're only trading for 6 hours, right, then an hourly works fine. That's 1 to 6. But since this is 24 hours, you got to divide that by 4 to get the 6. Do you see what I mean? So just do the math. Whenever you're looking at what ratio to use between charts, then just do the math and try and come up with the correct one. So if I were going to use Bitcoin and trade it all the time, I would have a monthly, a weekly, a daily, a 4 hour. I would go down to a 40 minute. And then from the 40 minute, I would go down to a 7 minute. Okay, so that's how I would go through the different time frames on this. Now, there's something else that I think I would be aware of. I do see some pretty good signals when it comes to the ADX. It's not like they don't work. However, we need to be aware of this. Notice what's going on here. You see all the tails that form on this. It's like there's a lot of tails. Okay. Personally, and this is a new phenomenon. We can go back and look at this. Can kind of see on the monthly chart when this was trading back in here. To me, this was the last great trade in this thing. I mean, this was just an incredible trade. I actually did the GBTC when that took place. Since that time, I really haven't done anything. Now, this wasn't a bad trade when you go down to the smaller time frames, but I didn't like this massive red bar. It ended up going and exceeding a new high, but then it failed miserably. I'm not saying there haven't been some pretty good trades. You can see the little pinch play to the downside here. And then kind of a reversal off the bottom after getting stretched away. And if you use the smaller time frames, you could have done some timing. But I do want to make it clear that from this point on, the volatility skyrocketed and we got a lot more tails everywhere. All right. So what does that mean and why am I bringing that up? Well, the reason is that we've got a problem with DI. All right, when you get these massive moves or massive prints that are big tails like that, it's going to have an effect on the DI and subsequently on the ADX. So what I notice is that we don't get a lot of low ADX signals, where both lines are below 25. It's like one or the other is almost always above the 25 line. And the reason for that, or the main reason, I think, is that there's just a lot of spikes and a lot of volatility. I think this is one of the most volatile instruments I've ever seen. All right. So, but with that said, let's just go and look at my approach for my book and my course and see if we can find some applicable, using multiple time frames, see if we can apply it to identify some signals. Just quickly going through and looking at this, I wanted to give one specific example so that you could just get an idea. So what I noticed is that on the weekly chart, well, first of all, let's look at the monthly, because the monthly made this move up and kind of got into this resistance zone here and then started to pull back. And if you notice, it's starting to find support at the 18-month line, and MACD is holding the signal line. All right, so I know I've got kind of in the back of my mind that we've weakened the downtrend a little bit, at least in the short term, because we've got underlying support here and we've got underlying support here, and we don't have a lot of strength in the sellers. All right, so I've got that in the background. It's not really what I'm doing to make a trade, but it is helping me feel a little bit more comfortable with maybe applying a short-term trade to this. All right, now if we go to the weekly, look at what's happened recently. So I had actually mentioned the fact that this was a key level here. If it didn't hold, then we were probably going to break the 18-week and end up spending more time consolidating. But look at what this has done. So this is actually making a higher low. It's just barely, but it's I guess it's more of a double bottom. And this is clearly, the MACD is clearly making a lower low right at the 0 line. And we do have a low ADX signal. All right, so when I look at that, I sort of think, okay, I've got a double bottom here and I've got a reverse divergence here at the 0 line. So let me go down to this now. Just like in stocks and in the market and the S&P, I don't do a trade off this time frame. This is giving me underlying information that suggests I could look for a play to the upside. All right, now if I go to the daily chart, I got this undercut pattern that clearly developed. And typically what I want when I see undercut is I want underlying support. Well, I've got the reverse divergence, I've got the MACD 0 line, and I'm sitting at the 40. All right, so I've got all of that in my favor. Now, it's not pulling back to a rising 18, which I give in a lot of my examples of undercut and rallies, but that's okay. This has a good underlying support. It's got signs the momentum wants to turn. It doesn't have a lot of strength to the downside. And I've got some support from the 18-month as well as the MACD on the monthly chart. So I've got all that going for me. All right, now, let's look at how we would take this trade. So we have this undercut, and if you notice, it just kind of takes off and moves to the upside. But as I've stated a lot of times on these undercut patterns, we want to go to the smaller time frame to identify the retracements and setups. That's the best way to really get yourself in on a lot of these trades, because a lot of times they're just going to happen very quickly. Now, I do want to point out on the daily chart, there's a couple of things that I think make this trade even more enticing. Number one, okay, so I'm talking about this undercut, right? But look at what this is. It's a pinch play. All right, we've got this coming down. It's a divergent pinch. Okay, we're making an undercut, but we're also making a new low in the move, and the MACD is holding the 0 line. Look at what else is taking place. We had a big, strong move to the downside with confirming ADX. Then we rally up and test it a few times, and then we make a new low, and ADX is nowhere near 25. So what are we looking for? We're looking for a reversal. So all of that is building up and saying, okay, when I come back up through this level here, I want to be looking for a trade on the smaller time frame. So if we go to, let's just make sure I'm looking at September 13th. Let's go to September 13th. Look at what this does on the 4-hour chart. So we can see the undercut pattern. See this undercut? Now we get a really strong green bar coming up through. But it's a little aggressive to play that, especially based on the ADX. But then look at what happens after that. We get a little follow through, and then we get a pullback that where green DI holds above red. Look at the pinch play here, and it's a beautiful pinch. All right. So I've got an undercut and rally set up with a pinch play right at the 0 line, and green starting to take over again. Right now, if I have that, and I know I've got reverse divergence on this time frame, I know I've got ADX divergence here and a pinch play here, I'm starting to build up a pretty good case. I mean, these might not look exactly like what we find in the stock market trades, but they're meeting all the criteria that I'm looking for. So I think that's a really high quality trade that you can take. And you would have gone and hit several targets on that one. So I wanted to just give one clean example of how this could be used. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, I've looked at a lot of the of different commodities. I've also looked at a lot of the futures, obviously I traded the E-mini for a long time. All of these approaches, all of this, it's really about finding the time frames that you want to look for and also understanding the nuances for each market. Some want you to take profits a little earlier. And what I would tell you is that you probably are going to need, more than anything, you'll probably need to adjust your trade management program for something like Bitcoin versus the stock market. A lot of the stuff that I would recommend in the stock market would probably, as I adapt to this, I'd get a feel for how far these moves actually take place, and I'd probably be even looking to take profits maybe a little bit quicker or something like that if a market doesn't like the trend. But I think you're going to find that the patterns themselves and using them in multiple time frames will continue to work in your favor. You gotta find out the nuances for each. And I can tell you one thing, that you need to make sure you can't really use a daily with an hourly. It won't work. All right. You can go 4 hour down to 40 minute. I don't like the 4 hour with a 1 minute, with a 1 hour, because it is too close. You'll miss a lot of signals doing that. So I prefer to do a 1-to-5 or 1-to-6 ratio. I think if you do that, you'll be all set. You got to get a feel for the signals, though. They're a little bit different in each market. Most of the videos that I do are obviously on stocks, but I can tell you that I've helped a lot of guys in different markets, for sure, all these different types of markets and Forex and stuff like that. And I can tell you that all the signals are applicable. All right. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Thanks.